My wife's funeral was barely over, then my mother-in-law took everything from her house. 9 days after I buried Amara, her mother Brianna walked into our Buckhead home like she owned it. She pointed at the ceiling. She pointed at the walls. She pointed at the hardwood floors beneath her designer heels. Then she told me she was taking all of it. The house, Amara's consulting firm, every bank account, every asset, every single dollar. Everything, Samuel, except your 5-year-old son, Isaiah. Because she never signed up to raise someone else's child. Before we move on, tell me in the comments which state you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's episode may touch a story that is still unfolding. My name is Samuel Harris. I am 33 years old, and until recently I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, in a neighborhood where people measure success by square footage and judge you by how quickly your lawn service shows up. I married Amara when I was 26. She was a business consultant who built her own firm from absolutely nothing. Well, from her mother's $200,000 loan and about 7,000 hours of her own brilliance. She started in a small rented office in Midtown, the kind of space where you could hear traffic through single-pane windows during every client call. Within 6 years, she had moved to a real suite in Buckhead, hired a talented team, and was billing over $700,000 annually. Harris Consulting Group. Her name was on every contract, and Brianna never let anyone forget who funded that first contract. Amara died on a Thursday afternoon, April 11th, sudden cardiac event. They found her at the office, her hand still holding a coffee cup from the morning. She was 34 years old. I received the call while picking up Isaiah from preschool. I drove to the office with his backpack still in my hand and goldfish crackers crushed under my shoes. By the time I arrived, the paramedics had already stopped working. The funeral happened the following Tuesday. Brianna wore black Prada sunglasses indoors, the kind that cover half your face so no one can tell if you are actually grieving or just performing for the audience watching. Khalil, Amara's younger brother, stood beside Brianna looking like a teenager waiting outside the principal's office. He was 30 years old, had never kept employment longer than 4 months, and lived in Brianna's guest house in Roswell, where his primary responsibilities included sleeping past noon and ordering things online with her credit card. Brianna was not some fragile widow. She had built and sold 3 hair salons across metro Atlanta. She understood business. She understood revenue. Or at least she thought she did. The salon industry operates on simple economics. Clients come in needing services. Clients leave satisfied. Money enters the register. She applied that same logic to everything, including a consulting firm she had never managed professionally. So when Brianna arrived in my kitchen that Monday morning, 9 days after the funeral, I should have anticipated it. But grief slows your instincts. You absorb damage you would normally block. She walked in wearing a charcoal blazer. She had dressed for this like it was a board meeting. Khalil followed her carrying a tape measure. An actual tape measure. While Brianna stood at my granite kitchen island explaining that she was reclaiming what her investment had built, Khalil wandered into the guest bedroom and began measuring the closet. I could hear the tape clicking and retracting from where I stood. I remember thinking, what does he even own that would require closet space? The man's most valuable possession was a gaming console. Brianna presented her case like she was delivering a quarterly earnings report. The firm was built with her money. The house down payment came from her savings. She had given us $45,008 years ago when we purchased this property, and she had not stopped mentioning it at every holiday dinner, every birthday gathering, every casual phone call since then. In her mind, she was co-owner of everything Amara ever created. And now that Amara was gone, she wanted her investment returned with interest, with appreciation, with everything attached to it. The only thing she did not want was Isaiah. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was declining dessert at a restaurant. No, thank you, not the child. Just the assets, please. I stood there holding a mug of coffee that had gone cold 30 minutes earlier and said nothing. Not because I agreed with her logic. Because my brain could not process losing my wife and being robbed in the same month by the woman who gave birth to her. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived at my door. Darnell Hutchins, attorney at law. Brianna had filed a formal contest of Amara's will and a creditor's claim against her estate for the $200,000 loan she provided years ago. This was no longer kitchen conversation. This was legal warfare, and she had launched it before the flowers on Amara's grave had wilted. Darnell was not an amateur. He filed the will contest on solid grounds, arguing that Brianna's $200,000 loan constituted an investment in the firm, giving her rightful claim to its current value. He also filed a separate creditor's claim for the loan itself, with accumulated interest calculated at 6% annually. 2 legal attacks at once. Brianna was spending $400 per hour on this attorney, and she wanted results immediately. But Brianna was not content waiting for the legal system to move at its typical glacial pace. She decided to begin managing her new empire right away. The week after filing, she drove to Amara's office on Peachtree Road, walked in like she already owned the building, and started introducing herself to the staff as the new oversight director. There were only 5 employees. 2 project managers, 1 administrative assistant, 1 accountant named Gloria who had worked with Amara for 7 years, and 1 junior consultant fresh out of Emory University. Brianna told them all she was assuming operational control and that significant changes were coming soon. She instructed Gloria to print the firm's revenue reports for the past 4 years. Gloria printed them without question. Brianna studied the top line, $720,000 in annual billings. She nodded like she had just confirmed what she already suspected and left the office. She never asked for the expense reports. She never requested the liability statements. She never opened a single folder that was not labeled income or revenue. It is like checking your bank balance but only looking at deposits and deciding you are wealthy. Then Brianna started calling Amara's clients. One by one, she tracked down phone numbers and called to introduce herself as the person who would be managing the transition of services. She had no legal authority to make these calls. She had no business license. She did not even understand what half of Amara's consulting projects involved. But Brianna believed confidence was identical to competence, and she had confidence in abundance. Most of Amara's clients, understandably disturbed by a phone call from their deceased consultant's mother, transferred to competing firms within days. Brianna was systematically destroying the revenue stream of the very business she was fighting to control. It was like watching someone burn down a house while simultaneously arguing with the insurance company about the property's value. Then Kahlo made his move. A week after Brianna's office visit, Kahlo pulled up to my house in Brianna's silver Lexus SUV with 2 duffel bags, a PlayStation, and a family-sized bag of chips. He walked to the front door and announced he was moving into the guest bedroom because, and I will quote him exactly, Mom said it is basically ours now anyway. He did not bring bed sheets. He did not bring a pillow. He did not bring a single item of professional clothing. He brought a gaming system and snacks. I told him to leave my property. He refused, claiming Brianna had given him permission. I called the Atlanta Police Department. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes, confirmed that the house was titled in Amara's name with me as surviving spouse, and escorted Kahlo back to the Lexus. He left the chip bag on my porch steps. I threw it in the trash. That night, Brianna called me. Her voice reached a frequency I did not know human vocal cords could produce, somewhere between a car alarm and a soprano hitting a bad note. She told me I was heartless, cruel, and that Amara would be ashamed of me for throwing her brother onto the street like garbage. I reminded her that Kahlo lived in her guest house in Roswell and had his own bedroom with a memory foam mattress there. She hung up on me. Meanwhile, my own family was losing confidence in me. My mother drove up from Macon that weekend, sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Brianna had outlined her hostile takeover strategy, and said, "Samuel, you have got to fight this woman." My best friend Terrence called every evening saying identical things. "Get an attorney. Get someone aggressive. Do not let this woman steamroll you and take everything Amara built." So I hired Beverly Thompson. She came highly recommended by a colleague of Amara's, an African-American woman in her mid-50s with natural silver locks and the kind of calm, precise energy that made you believe everything might actually work out. Beverly had handled estate disputes for 18 years. She reviewed Brianna's filings in approximately 30 minutes. Beverly told me the case was beatable. The loan had no partnership agreement attached, no formal terms, nothing in writing that gave Brianna equity ownership in the firm. The will was clean and properly executed with witnesses. Beverly said, "We fight, we win in court," and Brianna goes home with nothing except a lesson in contract law and estate planning. I told Beverly I needed a few days to think about strategy. That night, after Isaiah was asleep, I drove to Amara's office. It was almost 10 p.m. The building was dark except for emergency exit signs glowing red in the stairwell. I unlocked Amara's private office with the spare key I had always carried on my keychain and sat down at her desk. It still smelled like her. vanilla body lotion, and that coconut shampoo she used religiously. I opened the bottom drawer, the deep one where she kept files she did not want anyone else accessing. Behind a stack of old client folders, I found a sealed manila envelope. My name was written on the front in Amara's handwriting, not Samuel Harris, just Samuel with a small heart drawn beside it like we were still passing notes in college. I opened it carefully. I read what was inside. And I sat in that dark office for almost an hour without moving, without breathing heavily, without crying. For the first time since April 11th, my mind was completely clear and focused. The next morning I called Beverly Thompson. My voice was different. I could hear it myself. Steady, calm, like something had locked into place behind my eyes. I said, "Beverly, I have changed my mind completely. I do not want to fight Brianna in court. I want to give her everything she is demanding. Everything." Beverly did not respond for approximately 8 seconds. And for an attorney who bills by the hour, 8 seconds of silence is practically a medical emergency. She finally said, "Samuel, are you certain about this decision? I need to explain what was in that envelope, because this is where the story shifts direction entirely. And if you do not understand what Amara did in the final months of her life, nothing that happens next will make sense." 11 months before she died, Amara was diagnosed with a progressive heart condition. She had been experiencing symptoms: shortness of breath during normal activities like climbing stairs, chest pressure that appeared and disappeared without warning, a strange exhaustion that rest did not fix. She finally went to a cardiologist at Emory University Hospital, a specialist with an excellent reputation across the Southeast. The diagnosis was serious. Not immediately fatal, but the kind of serious where your doctor uses phrases like degenerative and long-term monitoring while looking at you with eyes full of professional sympathy. Amara told me about the diagnosis. She did not tell her mother. She did not tell her brother. She did not tell anyone else. Amara was a business consultant. She spent her entire career analyzing how organizations collapsed because leadership failed to plan properly. Someone cut corners. Someone assumed everything would work out fine. She was not going to let that happen to her family. So over those 11 months, while she was still going to the office daily, still wearing her power suits, still telling Brianna about major client wins at Sunday dinners, she was quietly, methodically arranging the pieces on the board. The envelope contained 3 critical items. First, a letter. Handwritten, dated 6 weeks before she died. It was not a financial document or legal instruction. It was a letter from my wife to me. She wrote about Isaiah, how he had started calling fireflies lightning bugs, and she never wanted to correct his beautiful vocabulary. She wrote about our kitchen, how the morning sunlight came through the window over the sink and hit the marble counter at exactly the angle that made everything look golden and perfect. She wrote about the day we met when I was 24 and working as a project coordinator at a tech startup in Buckhead, and she was consulting for that same company. She had asked me to coffee 3 times before I said yes, because I had a strict personal policy about not dating consultants, which clearly did not hold up very well in hindsight. The last line of the letter said, "Do not let her take what matters. She can have the rest, not instructions, not a scheme, just trust." Amara knew I was intelligent enough to understand what those words meant once I reviewed the second and third items in the envelope. Second, beneficiary confirmation documents. Amara had a life insurance policy worth $950,000. She had taken it out years ago at 28 when she first launched the firm. The bank had required it as collateral for her initial business loan. Back then, she was young and healthy, passed the medical underwriting process with 0 issues. The policy had been active for 6 years, premiums paid automatically every month without fail. All Amara did in her final months was update the beneficiary designation. Changed it to me, Samuel Harris, sole beneficiary. And here is the critical detail. Updating a beneficiary on an existing life insurance policy does not require a new medical examination. It is a form, one signature, complete. That $950,000 would pay directly to me when she died. It would never enter the estate. It would never go through probate court. Brianna could not touch it legally. Even if she discovered it existed, which she would not, she would have absolutely no claim to it. Amara had done the identical thing with her retirement accounts. A 401k with approximately $175,000 and a Roth IRA with approximately $68,000. Updated both beneficiary designations to me exclusively. Same principle. Named beneficiary receives these funds directly outside of probate, outside the estate process. That was another $243,000 that Brianna could not reach with any legal strategy. I want to be absolutely clear about something. This is not some hidden loophole or illegal trick. This is exactly how life insurance and retirement accounts function in every single state across America. Millions of families rely on this exact mechanism for wealth transfer. Financial advisors tell you to review your beneficiary designations annually. It is not fraud. It is basic estate planning that most people neglect until it is too late. Amara did not neglect it. Third item in the envelope was the real financial picture of Harris Consulting Group. Amara had prepared a detailed summary, handwritten in that precise script of hers, laying out every debt, every liability, every ticking time bomb inside her beautiful-looking firm. And this is where I shifted from grieving widower to something else entirely. The firm billed $720,000 annually. That part was accurate. That was the number Amara mentioned at family gatherings. The number Brianna had memorized like gospel truth. But here is what $720,000 in revenue actually looked like once you examined the complete financial picture underneath the surface. $128,000 in accumulated vendor and operational debts. A pending malpractice settlement, $195,000 already agreed to by Amara before she died, just waiting for payment processing. $52,000 in unpaid payroll taxes. The IRS does not forget about payroll taxes. They classify those as trust fund taxes, meaning the responsible party becomes personally liable for them. Then the office lease. 36 months remaining at $4,800 per month. That was $172,800 in rent for a space you could not legally abandon without penalty. The house was worth approximately $425,000 in the current Atlanta market. But Amara had taken out a $240,000 home equity line of credit 20 months ago to keep the firm operational during a slow period. Add that to the original mortgage balance of $175,000, and the total debt on the house was $415,000. After closing costs, realtor commission, and transfer taxes, selling that house would generate exactly $0, possibly negative dollars. And Brianna's precious $200,000 loan. She was classified as an unsecured creditor in bankruptcy terminology. Do you understand what that classification means legally? It means she stands last in line, behind the IRS, behind the malpractice plaintiff, behind every vendor, every landlord, every creditor with a properly executed contract. By the time all of them received payment, if they received payment at all, there would be nothing remaining for Brianna. Her loan evaporated the day Amara died. She just did not know it yet because she never asked the right questions. I sat in that office doing the mathematics on the back of a receipt from the grocery store. My side of the equation, $1,193,000 in clean money, tax-advantaged funds, non-probate assets, already legally mine the moment Amara died. Brianna's side of the equation, approximately negative $587,000 once you calculated every liability and subtracted every real asset with actual market value. The next day, Gloria called me, Amara's accountant, the woman who had managed the books for 7 years with absolute precision. Brianna had fired her the previous week. No severance payment, no advance notice. Just walked into the office and informed Gloria her services were no longer required. After 7 years of keeping that firm's financial records organized down to the penny, Gloria was hurt and angry. Gloria confirmed every single number in Amara's summary. She also told me something that made me close my eyes and just breathe slowly. When Brianna came to the office demanding reports, she asked specifically to see revenue reports. Gloria printed them as requested. Brianna studied them carefully, nodded with satisfaction, and left the building. She never once asked about expense reports. She never opened the liabilities folder sitting right there on the desk. She examined one column on one spreadsheet and decided she was inheriting a gold mine. I called Beverly Thompson the next morning. I said, do not fight this in court. Offer Brianna everything she wants. The house, the firm, every account listed in the estate. All I want is full sole custody of Isaiah. No visitation rights for Brianna whatsoever. Beverly told me to come to her office immediately. I brought Amara's envelope. I laid everything out on her desk methodically. The beneficiary confirmation forms, the financial summary, the mathematics. Beverly reviewed everything carefully. She verified the numbers twice using her calculator. She examined the insurance confirmation, the retirement account designations, the firm's debt breakdown line by line. Then Beverly Thompson, a woman who had practiced estate law for 18 years without flinching, leaned back in her leather chair and started laughing. Not a polite professional laugh, a real one, the kind where your eyes water and you need to remove your glasses to wipe them dry. She looked directly at me and said 2 words. Amara was brilliant. Then she picked up her pen and started drafting the settlement offer on her legal pad. Beverly contacted Darnell Hutchins the following week with a settlement offer that on paper appeared like complete surrender. Samuel Harris would relinquish all claims to estate assets. The consulting firm, the house, every bank account connected to Amara's name legally. In return, Samuel wanted exactly 2 things: full sole custody of Isaiah with absolutely no visitation rights for Brianna. And Brianna must drop the will contest permanently with prejudice. That was the entire offer. Take the empire, leave the child. Darnell, to his credit as an attorney, was immediately suspicious. When someone hands you everything you demanded without a fight, any competent lawyer starts searching for the trap hidden somewhere in the paperwork. He called Beverly back within hours and said he wanted additional time. Specifically, he wanted authorization to conduct a full forensic audit of the firm's financial position before advising his client to accept. He told Brianna directly, "Give me 2 weeks to examine the books properly. Just 2 weeks." That was all he requested. Brianna said no, and here is the interesting part. Her reasoning was not stupid. It was actually logical from her limited perspective. She had observed Samuel for 8 years of marriage to her daughter. She had witnessed a quiet, polite man who never argued back, never pushed back against her comments, never raised his voice at a single family gathering no matter how many times she made dismissive remarks about his career or his background. In Brianna's mind, Samuel was finally doing what Samuel always did, surrendering. And if you are holding what you believe is a winning hand and your opponent is attempting to leave the table, you do not say, "Wait, let me verify my cards first." You collect the pot immediately. She told Darnell, "I have reviewed the revenue reports myself. $720,000 annually. My daughter built that with my investment money. Get me those settlement papers before he changes his mind about this offer." Darnell pushed back hard professionally. He drafted a formal advisory letter, 3 pages single-spaced on law firm letterhead, stating that due diligence on the firm's complete financial position was incomplete and strongly recommending that Brianna wait for a full third-party audit before accepting any transfer of assets and liabilities. This is standard legal practice. Attorneys draft these documents to protect themselves from future malpractice claims. Darnell was protecting himself beautifully. Brianna read the entire letter, signed the liability waiver at the bottom acknowledging that she was proceeding directly against her attorney's written recommendation, and told Darnell to schedule the signing ceremony. There was one more critical moment. Darnell asked Beverly directly during a phone call, "Are there any non-estate assets we should be aware of? Life insurance policies, retirement accounts with named beneficiaries?" Beverly responded exactly as she should have under legal ethics rules. "Non-estate assets are outside the scope of this estate settlement, and my client is under no legal obligation to disclose them to opposing parties." Brianna heard this information through Darnell and dismissed it instantly. Amara never mentioned life insurance to her during any conversation. She assumed Amara did not have any coverage. Why would she? She was 34 years old. She was healthy as far as Brianna knew. Young professional women do not think about life insurance policies, except Amara did, because a bank had required it 6 years earlier as loan collateral. And Amara was the kind of woman who kept paying premiums automatically even when everything else was falling apart around her. The signing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late July. The night before, I laid out Isaiah's outfit for daycare, packed my bag with the signed apartment lease and a folder containing bank statements showing $1,193,000 in clean assets outside the estate, and set my alarm for 6:30 a.m. I climbed into bed, pulled the covers up, and fell asleep within minutes. First time that had happened since April 11th. Darnell Hutchins maintained his law office on the 4th floor of a modern building on West Peachtree Street in downtown Atlanta. Conference room with gray walls, commercial carpet, and a coffee machine that produced something technically brown and technically warm, but only theoretically resembling actual coffee. I arrived at 9:45 a.m. with Beverly. We took the 2 chairs on the left side of the conference table and waited quietly. Brianna walked in at 9:50 a.m. with Khalil and Darnell. She was dressed like she was accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award at a gala. Full makeup, gold jewelry, a cream silk blouse that probably cost more than my first month's rent at the new apartment. Khalil wore a brand new navy blazer. I noticed the price tag was still tucked inside the collar, hanging against the back of his neck like a small white flag of surrender. Nobody told him about it. I certainly was not going to mention it. The settlement documents were straightforward in legal language. I, Samuel Harris, hereby transfer all claims to the estate assets of Amara Harris, including, but not limited to, the business entity known as Harris Consulting Group, the residential property located in Buckhead, and all associated financial accounts, to Brianna Montgomery, who accepts said assets along with all associated liabilities, debts, and obligations. In exchange, Brianna Montgomery relinquishes all claims regarding custody of Isaiah Harris, and Samuel Harris receives full sole legal and physical custody with no visitation rights whatsoever for Brianna Montgomery or Khalil Montgomery. Beverly made one quiet statement before I signed the final page. For the record, my client is signing voluntarily and wishes to confirm that the opposing party has reviewed and accepted the estate inclusive of all disclosed liabilities and debts. Darnell confirmed this statement formally for the record. Brianna did not even look up from the papers. She was already reaching for her designer pen. I signed my name. Brianna signed hers. Khalil sat there grinning like he had just been promoted to executive management of something important. The entire process took 9 minutes, fastest 9 minutes of my life. As I stood to leave the conference room, Brianna could not resist one final comment. She looked at me across the polished table and said she sincerely hoped I would finally learn to stand on my own 2 feet without a Harris to support me financially. Khalil nodded along, probably without understanding exactly what she had said, but agreeing on principle because that is what Khalil does automatically. I picked up my briefcase, walked out of that building, collected Isaiah from daycare at 3:30 p.m. and drove to our new apartment in Midtown. I made him macaroni and cheese from a box, the kind with the cartoon character shapes, because Isaiah firmly believed cartoon-shaped pasta tasted superior to regular pasta. And honestly, he might be absolutely right about that scientific conclusion. We watched cartoons until 7 p.m. He fell asleep on the couch with cheese on his chin. I carried him to his new bed. Then I sat on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet and just breathed deeply. It was the most peaceful evening I had experienced since Amara died. 3 weeks later, Brianna walked into Harris Consulting Group as its legal owner and began operating her new business empire. I was not present to witness it, but in a city like Atlanta, information travels fast. Gloria still maintained friendships with people at the office, and some details I learned directly from Brianna herself during that final phone call. So here is what happened in sequence. Day 1 of ownership, Brianna opened a stack of mail that had been accumulating on Amara's desk for weeks. Envelopes she had walked past multiple times without bothering to open previously. The 4th envelope was from the Internal Revenue Service. Official notice of unpaid payroll taxes. $52,000 owed immediately, with penalties accruing at a rate of 6% monthly. Day 3, a phone call arrived from an attorney in Buckhead representing the plaintiff in a malpractice lawsuit against Amara's firm. The settlement had been formally agreed upon before Amara's death. $195,000 payment was overdue by 30 days. The attorney was extremely polite and extremely firm about the timeline. Day 5, the building landlord called about the commercial office lease. 36 months remaining on the contract. Brianna needed to sign a personal guarantee to assume the lease in her name legally or vacate within 60 days. Brianna signed the personal guarantee without hesitation. She did not pause because in her mind, the firm generated $720,000 annually and $4,800 monthly in rent was absolutely nothing. She just committed herself personally to $172,800 in future payments. Day 8, Brianna finally attempted to open Amara's QuickBooks file on the office computer. Without Gloria, it was complete chaos. 7 years of categorized entries that made perfect sense to Gloria and absolutely 0 sense to anyone else attempting to read them. Brianna hired a temporary accountant from a staffing agency downtown. The woman sat down at the computer, spent 5 hours clicking through files and reports, and then turned to Brianna with the expression of someone who just opened a door expecting a closet and found a staircase descending straight into darkness. She said, "Ma'am, are you aware there are over $128,000 in outstanding vendor invoices in this system, some of them dating back 16 months? Day 11, Gloria filed a formal employment claim for wrongful termination without proper notice or severance payment. 7 years of faithful service. Estimated claim value, $23,000 plus legal fees." Brianna called Darnell that night. I do not know exactly what she said during that phone call, but I can imagine the pitch of her voice, that smoke alarm frequency I had come to recognize so well over the years. Darnell pulled up his case files. He read his own advisory letter back to her word for word. He reminded her about the liability waiver she had signed against his professional recommendation. He said calmly, "I recommended a comprehensive audit before accepting. You declined that recommendation. I have complete documentation of this advice." Then Brianna called me directly. I saw her name illuminated on my phone screen in the darkness of my bedroom. I watched it ring 4 complete times. Then I set the phone face down on my nightstand and went back to sleep peacefully. Brianna hired a new attorney, a woman named Patricia Cole from a prestigious firm in Midtown, someone with no connection to the previous case, fresh perspective, sharp professional reputation. Brianna told her the complete story from beginning to end. She claimed she had been deceived, manipulated, tricked into accepting a worthless estate by her scheming son-in-law who had played weak and helpless. Patricia reviewed everything methodically. The settlement agreement, the signed liability waiver, Darnell's written advisory letter, the estate filings that Beverly had prepared and properly disclosed before the signing ceremony. Every liability had been listed in the documents. Every debt was documented in the paperwork. Nothing was hidden from view. Nothing was fabricated or exaggerated. Samuel had not lied about a single material fact. He simply had not volunteered information about assets that were legally his and legally positioned outside the estate by proper beneficiary designation. Patricia reviewed the complete file and reportedly told Brianna the truth in terms that left absolutely no room for hope or appeal. "You were represented by competent legal counsel. You were advised explicitly to wait for a full financial audit. You refused that advice. You signed a comprehensive liability waiver. The settlement was voluntary, mutual, and thoroughly documented. No fraud occurred. No misrepresentation happened. No case exists here." The exact words Patricia used, according to what I heard later, were, "What you have is not a viable legal claim. What you have is a very expensive lesson in due diligence." Brianna attempted to sell the house to generate cash flow. Her realtor ran the market analysis and delivered the news at Brianna's own kitchen table. After paying off the original mortgage, the home equity line of credit, closing costs, and agent commission, Brianna would owe approximately $14,000 at closing just to transfer the deed. The house was not an asset generating value. It was an exit fee she had to pay. The IRS did not care about Brianna's feelings or her financial situation. Payroll tax penalties kept accruing monthly at the established rate. Brianna began withdrawing from her personal savings accounts, money she had spent 32 years accumulating from her hair salon businesses. She sold the Roswell location first for $340,000, then the location in East Point for $280,000. $2 businesses gone within 3 months, and she still was not close to covering the firm's total liabilities. Khalil, who had been playing managing partner for exactly 21 days before the financial walls collapsed completely, suddenly remembered he had somewhere else important to be. He attempted to remove himself as co-signer on the firm's operating account. The bank informed him professionally that his signature had created joint liability for certain obligations processed through that account, including a vendor payment plan that Brianna had established using the account after the ownership transfer. Khalil hired his own attorney, a 30-year-old man whose mother had been paying his cell phone bill for the last 8 years, hired legal representation to sue that same mother, claiming she had coerced him into signing bank documents he did not fully understand or read. His case went nowhere in court. He had signed voluntarily as a legal adult with no documentation of duress or mental incapacity. But the lawsuit itself, Khalil Montgomery versus Brianna Montgomery, was real. Filed officially in Fulton County Superior Court. Case number and everything public record. Mother and son, The inseparable team who had stood in my kitchen measuring rooms and making plans together were now paying separate attorneys to argue against each other in civil court. I honestly could not have written a better ending if I had tried. And believe me, during those long, quiet nights in my apartment while Isaiah slept peacefully, I had imagined quite a few possible endings. The last time Brianna called me, I answered the phone. She was crying, not the performative grief I had witnessed at Amara's funeral, real tears, the messy kind. The kind you can hear clearly through a phone line. She said she was losing everything she had built. She said she did not know the full situation. She said she desperately needed help from me. I listened without interrupting. I did not speak over her. And when she finally finished talking, I said calmly, "Brianna, you stood in my kitchen and told me you wanted everything except my son. Do you remember saying that? You said you never signed up for someone else's child. You wanted the house, the business, every single dollar Amara built. And I gave you exactly what you demanded, every single piece of it." Then I ended the call and returned to helping Isaiah glue dry pasta onto construction paper, because he had decided he was creating a portrait of a dinosaur and needed more noodles for the spikes. That night, after Isaiah was asleep in his bed, I sat at my small kitchen table and opened my laptop. I completed the application for a master's program in business administration at Georgia State University. Tuition was $18,000 per year. My bank account contained $1,193,000 in it. I could afford it comfortably. On my nightstand, framed in a simple black frame I had purchased at a craft store for $8, was Amara's letter. I read the last line every single night before I turned off the light. "Do not let her take what matters. She can have the rest. Samuel Harris, age 33, widowed father, Atlanta resident, moving forward with his son and the wisdom his wife left behind." If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching.